what a way to enjoy tomorrow's rest day.
And this is bigger than his stage 4. As you said, it was cold-blooded. It was brilliant. This is monumental. This is huge. Wow. He would have gone through all of the emotions today.
And it is starting to sink in. For a little while, he looked like a man who had self-doubts.
He's shaking the head.
Shakes his head in disbelief, but believe it, Ben, you have been the best. What a move it was with 18 kilometres to go, attacking his breakaway companions. He can enjoy these final 300 metres. Ben King has been simply enormous. The Dimension Data team riding for Quebecer, they've got another story to tell. And hopefully this inspires more kids in Africa to ride their bikes. The American has been all the stars of the flag this afternoon. It's King who conquers La Covatilla to collect his second stage victory at this year's Vuelta a España. And that now surpasses stage 4 as the biggest win in his career.
And welcome back, cycling fans, to the Between Two Wheels podcast. This is your host, Tyler Janke, coming to you on a Labor Day weekend. I hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good day off. Hopefully you had a day off. I was able to take the day off to do some chores, do a little writing, do a little contemplating about my cycling and wondering why I'm doing this sometimes. But we'll get into that. Thank you for joining us. Today, it's just me. We don't have Chris Flower or Curt Mills with us. Chris had some other engagements. Curt, I don't know, he's up in the boonies doing something. But I swear, sometimes I think they're trying to sabotage this podcast by not showing up. Because you know what? It truly is better with the both of them, okay? And both of them at the same time. All right, well, anyway, let's get on. We're going to do a little Vuelta preview because we never got into that. A little recap to date. Some of the OVO Energy Tour Britain. Winter's road race here in Northern California. Do a little results and summary on that. Upcoming NCNCA races. I did the Masters Criterium State Championships this last weekend. We'll talk about that. Winners and losers of the week and things that make you go, So thanks for joining us. All right, let's get right into the Vuelta. We didn't do a preview on this, and it's got a similar route as last year. I don't know if you followed us when we were doing almost daily updates on the Vuelta last year, but it starts down in the southern portion. They hit some of the mountains and the climbs down there. They head up into the midsection where it's just more desolate. You'll see that. And then they head up to the north. They go and do a lot of the climbing up there. It's a big country. And then they come on down to Madrid again. So they've gone through 9 stages so far. Going into it, sometimes the Vuelta is an afterthought to some people. You have the Giro, the first Grand Tour of the year, which some people target. I mean, you had Chris Froome targeting it this year. You also had Dumoulin and Simon Yates. Then you have the Tour de France. That's obviously people target that. So they come in hot. Everyone there is fit because it's the prime race for the season. And then the Vuelta, and we talked about this last year. This is the first one for quite some years. You haven't had a Contador or a Froome in there. And so who's coming in? And Froome's actually taken this race on quite energetically the last several years that he's gone there. So it's not him just showing up. You see some of these GC guys, and they don't really participate much. They get blown out, or they're using it for training for something, or they get told basically they have to show up there for their sponsor. It was funny. I was listening to the cycling podcast, and they were talking to Sean Yates about when he won, I think in 1988. And at the time then he rode for CAS, and it was a Spanish team. So he was always courted into doing the Vuelta and all these Spanish races. And they basically, that was their target for the year, was the Vuelta. So he ended up winning it in 88. He almost won it in 87, but had a saddle sore so bad, I think he pulled out with like two or three stages to go. Either way, the contenders. So you have some of these people, it's a redemption race for some. Some have been focusing on it. Some are there. The Worlds this year is pretty hilly, so others riders are coming kind of trying to get in prep. So let's go over some of the GC. You had, first of all, through the race, you have 2 time trials. Stage 1 was a time trial, 8 kilometers, and then stage 16 is a 32.7K. There's some sprint stages, possibly 9, but when you say sprint stages in the Vuelta, look, there's lack of sprinters teams. Last year you had Matteo Trentin come in, and I think he won 3 stages by virtue of the fact that there just wasn't much sprint competition. So if you got a sprinter that can get over some climbs, you got a good chance at knocking out multiple stage wins. Matteo Trentin, well, he hasn't had one this year, but anyway, there's about 9 such stages that you've got to get over some climbs. You've got to be able to get to the finish, and then some of those finishes, which I think we saw on stage 8, actually had a punch uphill, so it's not as sprinty as you would hope. With that, there's like possibly 9 stages, lack of sprinters teams. There's going to be a lot of feature breakaways. And then obviously a lot of climbing stages. Who are the GC contenders? Well, coming into it, we had, and I'll just name off a few here, and then we can knock off some that have already bowed out. Richie Porte, BMC, Vincenzo Nibali, TBM, Bahrain Merida, Miguel Angel Lopez, Superman from Astana, Emmanuel Bachmann from Bora Hansgrohe, Thibaut Pinot from Groupama Pharma, FDJ, Simon Yates from Mitchelton Scott, Nairo Quintana from Movistar, Louis Menches from Dimension Data, Rigoberto Urán for EF Education, Ilnur Zakarin from Katusha, Stephen Kreuzwick and George Bennett, both of Team Lotto Jumbo, Mikuel Kwiatkowski from Sky, Wilco Kellerman from Sunweb, Baca Melema from Trek Segafredo, and Fabia Aru of UAD. And you also have Dan Martin in the mix there too. Dan Martin has not shown that he's basically interested at all in GC, so he goes out the wayside. We'll start with Fabia Aru. He has, I think, tried, but he just hasn't been able to hold on. He's gone. Ilnur Zakarin's had some trouble. Louis Menches hasn't really been in the mix there. Thibaut Pinot's lost some time, but he's still holding on. Vincenzo Nibali has not been well. And speaking of not being well, Richie Porte actually had stomach issues coming into. I don't know what his plans were in the overall anyway, but Richie Porte had stomach issues. He wasn't even at the team presentation. He didn't do so good in the first time trial. He, I think, blew his time out on stage 2, and so he's gone too. All right, so let's just go over some of the recaps from what you've had. You had stage 1 time trial. Rowan Dennis takes the red jersey. Yeah, they have a red jersey, and with about a 6-second win over Kwiatkowski of Sky. Very impressive win, and somewhat of a redemption for his near win at the Giro. This is also, he took the jersey last year in the Vuelta with the team time trial. BMC wins it. He's the first to cross the line, so it's not his first go around with getting the red jersey of the Vuelta. By the way, the jersey color of the Vuelta hasn't always been red. It used to be yellow. It was golden. I think it was orange one year. It's red now. The Vueltas also used to be the first Grand Tour of the year. Early on, it was the Vuelta 2 weeks, and then they had the Giro, and then they had the Tour de France. So think about that. The Grand Tours were done and over in July, but the Vuelta has now moved to this time of year. Better weather, hot, different spot on the calendar, and here's you have it. Stage 2 with a short uphill finish, kind of like an Ardennes Classic type, and you'd think, oh, Kwiatkowski has a good chance of this. Well, Valverde does too, and he ends up taking it. A big loser on the day was Richie Porte, who came into the race with, like I said, stomach issues, and they obviously didn't resolve themselves. Stage 3, we then had the sprinters got a chance. Elio Viviani of Quickstep takes the win over Nizzolo, of Team Trek Segafredo, and Peter Sagan. Peter is in the race as well. He's gone through the divorce, or he's going through one. He didn't have, he had an okay Tour de France. He got injured. He was one of the he won the green jersey. He was one of the sprinters to actually make it to Paris. Now he's in this race. Maybe he's trying to, I don't think he's got a chance at Worlds, but you never know. I mean, I wouldn't have thought Greg Van Avermaet would have had a chance at the Olympics a few years ago. And Sagan didn't think he had a chance as well. So he decided to do a mountain bike race. Double flats, I think, right to begin with. His chances are out on the mountain bike. Greg Van Avermaet, a very similar rider, takes the win. Maybe Sagan says, I got to give it a shot anyway. You never know. Probably not, but you never know. Stage 4. Okay, so this had a finishing climb around 10 kilometers, and it was going to be a GC shakeout. They got to break up the road. You've got Ben King, the American Ben King from Team Dimension Data. You also had Pierre Roland from EF Education First, 2 teams that had not had a World Tour victory as of yet. And then you have, I think, I'm trying to remember the guy's name that took off with Ben King, and it was an Astana rider, Stilnov or something like that, and they ended up holding off. you have Roland almost catching them right as they're catching him about 200-300 meters, which is a little uphill finish. Ben King takes off and he ends up getting the win. So Team Dimension Data ends up getting the first World Tour victory of 2018 with American Ben King. And then you have an American team right behind with the Frenchman Pierre Roland just missing out. Now, those two are former teammates, and I think you can see with the finish that Ben King would have easily beat him even if Pierre Roland would have been with him. So, and those two have been in breaks together, former teammates. I think they knew how each other rode. I don't think Pierre Roland had much of a shot on that one because I think Ben King just came into that one looking. And we'll talk a little bit about him and things that make you go, Steve, stage 5, the day after Team Dimension Data gets off the list of the World Tour teams without a stage win. EF Education First does the same thing with the breakaway and their road captain, Aussie Simon Clark. Now all 2018 World Tour teams have a victory. Compare the one win by Dimension Data and EF with almost 40 wins by Quickstep. And they tie now Quickstep for many wins in this Vuelta. Stage 6, Port seems to be a little recovered. He decides to go on a breakaway, a 3-man break. He says, and it's a flat stage, he's feeling better, he's out there working, but he even says in some interviews, it wasn't ever going to last. I don't know why a guy like him decides to go on a breakaway on a kind of a flattish day when he doesn't think it's going to last. I mean, he was out there for 90 plus kilometers. They get reeled in. I think it was around 15K to go. There's some of these bollards in the middle of the road that the riders hit. Is the kind of things that took out rider for Chuck Sigafredo, American. Why am I blanking on his name? But anyway, you know who I'm talking about. He lives up there in Napa area now. And broke his leg a few years ago on the Basque tour of the Basque Country, and the same type of thing was in the middle of the road here. Some riders hit it, started causing trouble. Next thing you know, there's wind and teams are splitting up, and there's some weird descent with the road that's kind of broken up, and it's just chaos all over the place. It looked like a quick step. You had EF Education First coming to the front, kind of driving things, trying to do their best quick step impression in the classics type of thing, breaking up the field. And near the end, you finally have Tony Galopin, a French rider for AG2R, jumping away and holding off in the last 1+ K. And had a little pitch up the finish as well, where Peter Sagan and Alejandro Valverde get second and third, and with kind of a mix of whole riders in here. You had Iran at 6th place, Sepp Kuss getting 10th because he was leading out his team there. So American Sepp Kuss, by the way, who's had a phenomenal Vuelta as we've seen so far. Very impressive coming off his tour of Utah. Maybe we'll talk about him a little bit as well. So then you had stage 8. You had, actually that one had a pitch up to the finish, and it was a little deceiving. A lot of the sprinters got jettisoned out of there, but one that didn't was Danny Van Poppel, the Lotto Jumbo team. So you had their guys, once again, Sepp Kuss kind of doing a lead out for the race, and Van Poppel has a good punch, but man, and it looks like Sagan's going to win this. He starts coming around, and you're like, this is what he does. Sagan takes the win, and actually old man Valverde pips him at the line. So Peter Sagan doesn't look like he's in his best form, because this should have been a no-brainer. But you go Valverde, Sagan, Van Poppel, and then you've got, mixing here with Izagiri, Nizzolo. So you do have a sprinter, Harada, Yates, Kruijswijk in 10th. I mean, so it's a real mix of some sprinty types, some classic Ardennes classic types, and obviously the GC types. Stage 9, which goes right into a Sunday before the rest day on Monday today. And it was an exceptional stage where you had a decent break off, and you had Ben King, Mollema, and a few others in the break. And just watching that for the last, 25, 30K, there's a few guys keep trying to jump. Not Lawrence Tendam, but you had, I'm blanking on all these guys' names, but another Dutchman, Thomas de Gent, there you go, in the break, specialist for this kind of thing. And I'm watching it, and as guys are going, Ben King looks super snappy getting up to any of them. He's having no trouble closing the gaps down. He's not looking bad, and he's a decent climber. A few years ago, he was won a stage in the Criterium du Criterium International, I think it was. But he's also, and I'll get to it, I have it marked down here. We'll talk about that a little bit later, where he gets a second or third to, it was Simon Geschke, it was second, and Alberto Contador was first in a pretty tough climb, Tirreno Adriatico, I think, finish, and it was super, super steep. Matter of fact, Geschke, if you watch that over, he's actually paper bowling back and forth. The climb is so steep. And Ben King hangs on. He's not a bad climber at all. Well, what you have in this is he gets about a minute and a half gap going into the bottom of the final 7-8 kilometer climb, which has sections up to like 15%, and he kicks it, and Bauke Mollema closes it down to about, at one point, 18-20 seconds, but he never is able to actually fully close that down, and Ben King goes on to win 2 stage wins. American, so I have Team Dimension Data gets their, they have 2 wins compared to Quick Step in this race. I mean, who's gonna understand that? But the real race behind, you had the GC race, which gets shaken up, and Wilco Kelderman kind of hits it out at the top. You look at this race, this stage, it's very barren road. It's out in the middle like a desert ski hill, and the wind starts taking effect. Kelderman hits the front, drops a bunch of people off, and ends up with Simon Yates in the lead overall, getting the red jersey. 1 second over Valverde. You got Quintana, Buckman, Izaguri, Tony Gallopin, Miguel Angel Lopez, Rigoberto Urán, Stephen Koizuk, and George Bennett for the top 10. All right, so what have we actually looked at and seen? One is don't show Kwiatkowski there, which I think he's down 2 minutes. I'll take a look and see what his actually. Okay, so here for the overall right now, you have Kelderman is 150 back. He had I think a bike problem at one point. You have Kwiatkowski at 210, Thibaut Pinot 233, Ben King at 241, which is funny. Rudy Merlard, who had been in the red jersey, gets dropped out there quite significantly on that day. Ben Keep, and 2 times he's got the stage win. He's been the virtual leader at one point in the stage for the red jersey. So, he may be looking for more opportunities, but they're not going to be giving it to him with him being so close to the overall lead at this point. He's just not going to get the leash. Not that he has a chance for the overall, but he has been focusing on this race and obviously put in his good training, and it's come to fruition. So good for him. And just mentioned today, I saw in the news where he has signed again with Team Dimension Data. They've confirmed signing him up. So obviously you couldn't let him be out there in the transfer market much longer with the results he's had. And I don't know if, these 2 stage wins were the seal of the deal, or if they'd already been coming down the road. Either way, it's good news for him and good to see. So who else do you have kind of coming up in here and some of the surprises? Well, like I said before, Kwiatkowski's looked pretty good. He's 2 something back. Team Sky has not looked that great. So it's kind of interesting. You're not seeing a Sky dominance, and it's kind of fun to actually watch a different type of race that you are actually getting to see different riders to the fore. One team that is, it's a little bit, they're riding more like Team Sky, but they're not able to finish it off like Team Sky, is Lotto Jumbo. So you have 3-4 guys usually there at the end. One of them is Sepkus, who just looks phenomenal on the climbs. I mean, he looks really at ease. He's sometimes sitting on the back, and then he gets his riders, Kreuzwick and Bennett, takes them up to the front. Now, Kreuzwick and Bennett have just had a little trouble finishing things out. I mean, Kreuzwick did do the tour, got 5th in the tour. He looked really good there. George Bennett, a little bit more young and not had the finishes that Kreuzwick has had. So, I think it was 7th or so on the tour last year before he got real sick and had to come out. But anyway, it's been interesting to see them kind of take a little bit more lead. Then you have Movistar with 2 guys up in the top, Valverde and Quintana. Quintana looked really good on the climb when Kelderman hit out. It had been him taking the lead, him being Nairo first, and then it's been Kelderman who took over from him. But, you're going to see probably a battle. Nairo looks really pretty good there. I don't suspect Tony Gallopin's going to be staying up. Lopez, Superman, who last year's Vuelta looked phenomenal. He's not quite on that kind of form right now, at least it looks like. But then I think he just did either the Tour or the Giro, so it's not his first one of the year. And then Rigoberto Urán, who had crashed out of the Tour, he's been looking pretty good. And his team has been looking pretty good. I know Woods looks like he had crashed pretty hard. He was in a break the other day for quite a while. And then on stage 9, he had actually been up there much longer than he had previously. Not to mention Simon Yates. So you got Simon Yates, who may be doing a little bit of a renaissance or comeback, from how he had done so bad. Well, he'd done exceptionally well at the Giro and then fallen so quickly at he and Thibaut Pinot, Pinot did that as well. So it would be interesting. And Aru, you got those guys in here, and the only one that really is on form again is Yates. And I'd much rather be the person that's in the lead that maybe crashes out, and crashes being, body just can't handle it, than the guys like Aru, who's already fallen way down, and he's in 11th place at he's only 108 back. It seems like he's worse, but maybe he's just hanging in there. I don't know. That's I don't expect much out of him, to tell you the truth. He hasn't looked all that great. All right, so that's what we have for the Vuelta, and we'll take a little look at what's coming up this week. So we have a rest day today. Tomorrow is going to be a flat day on stage 10, and you're going to see pretty much the sprinters. You don't get too lot of chances for that in the Vuelta, but this one you definitely have. It's one of the more pancake flat races that you have. But then you start having the next day, stage 11, 209 kilometers, a lot of little climbs up and down. It's just not so good. Stage 11 or 12 on Thursday is got 2 category climbs, but that might be a sprinter's one as well. But come Friday, you're going to have some nasty stuff with a Val de Cabrera La Campanerona, and it's got 2 nasty climbs. A finishing climb does not look healthy at all. Then Saturday, you've got 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 ending summit finishes, and 4 climbs with a summit finish. To Les Pres Nova, and then Lagos de Covadonga on Sunday with another finish of top to climb. Then you get a rest day, and you get a time trial, and then you get some more climbing. So it'll be a good last 2 weeks, and depending on how the heat is, it's been really hot there. See how those guys go. Okay, let's talk about some World Tour transfers and news. Last week we talked about a bunch of them. Danny Pate retiring, UHC stopping sponsorship, Jelly Belly going out. This week we had Aqua Blue disbanding, and there's been a lot of stuff out on the web about that. I heard the interview with their owner, Delaney, I think is what it is, some Irish guy that owns Aqua Blue. Interesting fact too, his daughter is also married to Caleb Ewing. So Caleb came out and was defending him, and people were ripping Caleb all up and down. Oh, it's your father-in-law, which I understand. But it sounds like to me, the big issue when you hear the interview is that the team was horribly disgusted with the 3T bikes and the service. Which is interesting because it's Gerard Vroomen, who used to have Cervelo and the Cervelo test team. So it's not like it's a new company, 3T, which makes really good handlebars, decided to make bikes, and they're suddenly thrown into the world of bikes and not sure what. Vroomen had a full-on team, and he's been doing bikes for a long time. He did lose, I think, a lawsuit on that. But anyway, it was interesting that, I didn't heard Adam Blythe on a show, I think it was Wiggins' show, and it basically said this is the worst crap ever. Well, I think about it. I just did a winter's road race. I used my 11:52 or 53, whatever I have, and my 39:28 during the race. So there's a full range. They don't have that. I don't care if you've got 10, 12 gears in the back. If you've only got one up front, you're missing out on a lot. And you try to do a World Tour racing with that, I just don't think the 1x has a place for that, especially when teams are not anywhere near. You're putting weight on a bike, so to make sure that you're complying with the rules, you're not saving enough weight with a 1x that you have to do that to get it down to this certain level to make you competitive. Bikes are not in that way anymore. Plus, Blythe basically said it was a crap bike. He said it was a track bike trying to make it into a road bike. So I don't know. And then you just had, they pulled out of Tour of Britain. The team disbanded. It sounded like what they were saying was they were trying to come out. They had a 2 or 3 year contract with 3T, and the only way that they felt they can get out of it was to buy up this other team, the Veranda's Willems-Crelan team, and Spider company was the name of the paying agent, and to be able to breach their contract or to get out of their contract with 3T, they needed to do that to transfer over, so they would have a reason to do that. And that when that deal fell through, which sounds like it was a shitty negotiations there as well, according to the owner of Aqua Blue, that is, that when that all fell through, this fell through, and he could not continue with the 3T bike situation. It sounds like the way he sounds very earnest and truthful when you hear the interview. He did an interview with Cycling Podcast, but it's almost too fanciful to really go onto all of that. That a bike sponsor would ruin your entire existence. Now, part of the problem there too is, Aqua Blue had this just situation where they're an online store going to be supporting the team. Is a great concept. Self-supporting is a little bit more like, hey, you've got the Oakland Athletics, and you'll be able to buy their gear, and you're everything you do goes back to them, and you're able to support them. And so you have this concept, which is a little bit different, and it didn't work out. Did you buy anything from Aqua Blue online? I buy everything from Amazon and all these other places, but not Aqua Blue. Maybe I should have. Maybe they should have made it a little easier, or I don't know. Related to that, you had the Veranda's Willems-Crelan team, which was squashed with them, but now they're being Crelan. I don't think that is joined Roompot. So there's a whole new team that's going, and now the guy, I'm trying to remember their main cyclocross guy, he's basically complaining that he doesn't want to be a part of this. So who knows? Gavin Mannion to Rally. That was another one we had, which was pretty good. Rally, as we know, UHC pulled out. Gavin Mannion had a pretty good end of the year. We'll also have some other ins and outs. The World Tour, Cycling Weekly has a little link you can do for all the transfers, ins and outs of the world if you're looking for more. And we'll probably update those as they come along. All right, let's talk about some winners and losers from the World Tour. Oh, first of all, we didn't talk about Tour of Britain. Maybe we should go to that first. Look, Tour of Britain, one thing that they lost out of this was the Aqua Blue team. So they don't have the Aqua Blue team coming to there. I know Larry Warbass was saying he was focused on this. He said he hasn't been this light. He's hit his race weight. He hasn't been this light in a long time. So his team, he's not able to race. The Wiggins team was able to come in and fill the void for that. So they are actually racing the Tour of Britain this year. Stage 1 was won by Andre Greipel, which was just ahead of Caleb Ewing, and I'm not sure, it almost looked like Alaphilippe was in there, but then a Wiggins guy was third, so pretty good for him. Caleb Ewing and Greipel, interesting, they're going at it as Greipel's going to a lower end team next year, and you have Caleb Ewing going to Greipel's Lotto Soudal team. So interesting that they were battling it out there as well. Greipel to Fortunato, that's who he's going to. That's right. Stage 2 was won by Cameron Meyer of Mitchelton Scott. So Mitchelton Scott finally does get their win, even though Caleb couldn't close it the day before. And we'll keep you updated as to how that race goes in the near future. All right, so some winners and losers. World Tour, how do you, as an American, not pick Ben King? Pretty big winner as it goes, and both Ben King and Sepp Kuss, pretty excited about the way that they've both ridden. Different ambitions, different ways to go. It almost makes you think that if Sepp was just focusing, he could maybe get a victory here himself, the way he's riding in some of these. But has different ambitions, and he's just cutting it short near the finishes when he needs to. Otherwise, Ben King is doing it for the Americans, and very impressive. As far as the losers go on the World Tour, Aqua Blue, we talked about them enough, but all those riders out, the owner said they're going to be paid through the end of the year. In contract, they had 5 riders that were out of contract going into the next year. Now, let me explain that. 5 riders that he had signed, he said. So he expects 3 of them to not have a problem signing with other teams, or they had an option. 2 of them, he wasn't so sure about. However, he said since he had 5 of them for contract for next year, that he would honor those contracts next year. That wasn't a problem. So those 5 guys, if they can't get another team, supposedly they're going to be paid for 2019 season as well. All right. got Coach Nate Dunn, a data-driven athlete. He supplies us some coaching tips, and this week's will be on motivation. I'm sure you have maybe some motivation this off season, so stay tuned for that. All right, so USA Crit Series. Look, I didn't get really into the one that they had this weekend. It was Gateway in St. Louis. I think they had 3 races there. I think they were all won by the same rider. He's the U.S. Crit champion. And I'll get to that name here in a second. But when I do, first I just wanted to say Timmy Bauer of Oak Valley Community Bank and Josh Carling, also of Oak Valley Community Bank, both headed out there to the USA Crit Series to do those. And I saw online so that there was a short video that I think it was the Saturday night race that Timmy Bauer had posted up of him in the race when he crashed out, and it was pretty wacky because what you ended up seeing was on, I think it was just a few laps to go, there's a rider, the road kind of splits, the rider's kind of coming back through everybody, and Timmy decides to take the right behind this other rider. And those guys are going past a guy on the left, and the guy that they're going past is just going slower because they're probably coming from off the front. And the rider right in front of Timmy decides that he's going to take his hands off his bars and he's going to push the guy in the hip because he's pissed off that this guy is basically getting in his way. And he doesn't have to. I mean, he can ride by. And when he pushes off to him on his left, he basically pushes himself into the rider on the right. And then he goes down and he takes Timmy and everybody with him. And it looks pretty pathetic when there was no need really to be taking your hands off the bars and going down at all. So, sucks for those guys. I hope everyone's okay and that they're, be able to take the line in another one. And also a good reminder out there not to be taking your hands off the bars and just, kind of worry about your own self. Use your elbows, use your hips and your shoulders, but taking your hands off the bars is just, I don't know, it ruined everybody's night, it looked like. All right, so on the local scene, weekend or so ago, we had the Winters Road Race. This was a phenomenal event. I really enjoyed this race. This one, there's a difficulty and there's a climb that's anywhere from 12 minutes, 13 minutes, depending on how fast you're going, and it's got a nice kicker at the last. It's about 0.9 kilometers or so, and then there's a nice little snaky descent, and then you have this loop, and it's about a 25-mile loop. I'm in the Masters. We do 3 laps of that. The P12 field does 4 laps of that. And I like it because for me it shakes out some of the sprinters, and then the sprint itself is just a gradual kick uphill. It's not much of a kick, but you're coming up pretty fast, and all of a sudden it's just a little bit of a rise. And the climb itself will shake some people out. So if I'm riding well, for me personally, it works pretty well because I can get over the climb and I can get into a group, a more diminished group, and then my sprint has a better chance. So anyway, we go in there. There's multiple categories, but they do a few years ago, they had decided to add in, which is 30 plus instead of a 35, but it's a 30 plus cat 1, 2, 3. And we were able to field 6 of us in there. So we had a bunch of us that were in there because of the age. So we ranged from 32 or so all the way up to 47 for me. All the way up to 47. So it was an interesting race. There was, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 in the race. I'm trying to remember the exact numbers. But we had a rider, Stefan Creason, who we were gunning for, who goes uphill pretty good, and he also finishes it pretty well. And just kind of see how that shakes out. First time up the climb, there was us. There was a Sierra Nevada. They had a few riders. We had a rider off the front with one of their riders. Almost caught them on the first climb up. There were some riders from Tarun, San Francisco Squadra, and presented by Tarun. And they had 3-4 riders. And the first time over, shake, I don't know, half the field out, regroup, except for there's 2 guys off the front, one of our teammates again, Nick, and then another rider ends up bridging. Anyway, there's 3 off the front. They stay off until the climb again. Nick Castor, our guy, we catch him on the climb. And as we go over the second time, there's 5 of us now. I get in a little group. We're chasing on. Then the group comes back to us. There's 2 Tarun guys that weren't really interested in working, and there were 2, and then we had 4 data driven, 2 Tarun, and then 1 Sierra Nevada, and then the group kind of meshes again. I don't know, there's 15. We get another group of our guys off the front to make the Tarun guys chase. Going into the final climb, we have our teammate Nick goes up the road again. There's like a 3rd break. And as we hit the bottom climb, let me backtrack. So, and we're not going to take too long describing how this whole thing went down, but when we went up the climb the second time, we were getting mixed in with all these other groups, the 35 plus. There was a Cat 3 or 4 group that was getting mixed in. And we just kept going back and forth past each other because we had a guy up the road, so then people weren't chasing. So then you're sitting up more, and then next thing you know, they're doing the same thing. They're guys up the road, and then they're sitting up, and then they're chasing back, and then they're coming through us, and we're coming through them. So we have the 35s. Then there was us, the 30s, and then there was like the Cat. We'll just call them the Cat 4s. Were behind us. Coming into the bottom of the climb, where all of a sudden a guy in our group just takes off. Well, you have to chase him. I don't know who he is. He's a little guy, so we're thinking he might be this phenomenal climber. We don't know who he is. And then he just decides he's going to power right through the 35. So they're kind of pulling over. We're flying past them right before the start of the climb. And then as we hit the climb, the 4s come through. So you have 3 groups all mixed in. And then what happens is the 35s just pull over about halfway up the climb. They pull over and decide to just let us cruise through, which was phenomenal it was very mature that they did that because it was just a cluster. And so anyway, good call out for the 35s for doing the mature thing. Didn't really mix in with them too much more, even though they sat up pretty good. There was still back and forth with that 4s group all the way to the finish. It was weird. Anyway, coming into the climb the last time, we had Stefan Creason, and then Sierra Nevada's Eric Nelson took off, and I think they had softened up the Troon guys enough where they weren't able to take off. And there's a small group over the top. There's maybe 7 of us, and then we had 3 DDA in there. Well, Eric Nelson ends up taking the win over Stefan, our teammate, narrowly finishing over there. And then we had our teammate Chris Flower was able to kind of lead out Jason Smith and I was able to take the field sprint for 3rd, Jason Smith for 4th, over Tarun guy Brian Schuster. So good day there. We had a lot of fun. It was fun doing all the team tactics stuff with Sierra Nevada. They had a good showing. Nate Dunn, Chris Flower, Nick Castor, Jason Smith, Tyler Janke, and Stefan Creason all in there for data-driven athletes. So we had a good time. So we read off some of these other ones. So you had the Pro 1-2s. You had Cooper Shanks of the Dolce Vita winning the P12, William Downing in 2nd, Adam Naguib of TMB Development in 3rd, Chris Colville deciding to do the P12, and Josh Carling rounding out the top 5. Eric Nelson, Stefan, Tyler, Jason Smith, Brian Schuster in the Masters 30 to 1-2-3. Rick Hufford of the Folsom Bikes was in there for 6th place. Then you had Squadra, Davis Bike Club. Anyway, it was a good smattering. Chris Flower ends up with 10th, even though he was cramping on the day. It's good for him. The Masters 35, Richie Voss of Some Power takes the win over Dana Williams of Team Mike's Bikes. Jeremy Cattell of Touchstone Racing in 3rd. We had the Masters 45, Tom Lyons of Thirsty Bear, of course. Hayden McKay of R4R Make-A-Wish. And Menko Jensen of Penn Velo rounding the top 3 there. Chris Baker in 5th for Touchstone as well. He's a very strong racer. Masters 55, Dan Shore and Kevin Metcalf go 1-2 there for Fun Sport and Pete's. The women's P1, Eleanor Weisman wins for the She Spoke. Amanda Coker in 2nd. That's Cat 3s. The P12, they had 1 entrance, which was Ellie Velez, DNF. I don't know what happened there. Can't imagine you'd get dropped if you're the only one, but maybe she had a bike problem or just didn't want to ride. Women's Masters, Casey Myers, Amy Moore, and Shannon Gaffney go 1-2-3 for there. Anyway, Masters also did the World Championships. Dan Bryant takes 3rd for the individual time trial over in Italy. We'll have to get a report from Brian Zimney on how the whole thing went. My whole thing is, Brian, it's a grand fondo. Should we give it the credit it seems? You said it was pretty interesting. It was so awesome. It's going to be hard to describe. So we'll look forward to your description. We'll bring you back in studio and have you talk about that. All right. So NorCal winners and losers. I should probably talk first though. Let's go to this weekend's Masters and Juniors Crit Championships. We'll go through, read some names off and some winners, and then I'm going to talk about the 45 to 49 real quick before we move on and get out of here. All right, so in the Junior 11-12 Open, Nolan Ariano and Richard Jones go 1-2. Doesn't look like there's any more than just those two. The 13-14 Arten Duransoy and Matthew Amara and Jace Stone go 1-2-3. The men Junior 15-16, Finn Thompson of Davis Bike, Riley Mullen of Team Swift, Andrew Essler of Jackaroo, 1-2-3. In the 17-18, Crichton Gruber of Team Swift wins that. He's been doing, I think he was in the top 10 or so in the men's P12 Winters Road Race. So he's the guy we've talked about all season. He won our $100 prize for Nevada City as well. Stephen K. Miller of the Tiano Duro Junior Cycling Team and our friend Jonah Kellogg of Team Swift comes in third. Juniors 9-10, Max Doyle, Brady Ariano, and David Avery. And, let me look back up here because I know a friend. I'll have to see who it is. He's a kid that rides with us on the weekends, and I'm not sure of his name, but he rides with Nabil Saman, and his dad does as well. And I'll have to get his name to make sure I did get that right. Okay. Now the Masters 30. So you had Jonathan de Guzman and Jeff Linder. So they had a Masters 30. I don't know if they get a Bear jersey, but there was only two, I think, of them that actually registered. They raced with the 35s. So good job, Jeff Linder and Tarun and Jonathan Desmond of SDBC. I don't know what team that is, but good job. Then you had the 35s. Sam Benedict, that's who I would have predicted. He's been a real fast finisher. Team Mike's Bikes. Chris Coble in second. James Enright of Squadra Tyrone and Ariel Herman of Thirsty Bear, along with Zach Morvant taking 1 through 5. You have the Masters 40 to 44. They didn't have a big group either. Jeremy Cattell, Touchstone Racing, wins that. Stephen Hoffman of SJBC and Matt Michael of Tarun Elite doing 1, 2, 3. All right, then you come to the category I raced in, the 45, 49, and you get the winner, Scott Giles of Rock Solid Cycling, Chris Phipps of Thirsty Bear, and Scott Cox taking out the third place. Scott's not on a team right now. I'm not sure what team he's riding for. We talked to him a few weeks ago. He's no longer riding with Mike's Bikes. Chris Baker, fourth place, and Lucas Paz of Kai Velo Racing taking 1 through 5. Okay, so what happened there was this was maybe 30 riders. Let's see what they have, 35 or so, and small field, a lot of strong guys. It was a little windy, and brake goes off early. It gets reeled in. Then another brake goes. I let it go up the road, and it gets a little bit of distance, and then I make a jump for it. So I try to go across, and I do. I make it across with a few other people, and then look back about half lap, and it's filled all together. And right as that happens, another group goes, and they counter right off of that as we've been pulling on the front, and they get a little bit of a gap as well. So I'm thinking, okay, well, those guys look dangerous. And there's like 7 of them that go up the road. I then try to make an attack to go with them to bridge up there again. That gets brought back. As soon as that gets brought back, another 3 group go, which is Scott Giles, Scott Fonseca, and I'm not sure who the other one. It might have been the Kai Velo guy, Lucas Paz. They go up, and I'm. I don't have a lot, and no one's really else going. So there's 11 guys go now up the road, and it doesn't come back. So now it's up to me, and I think it's Michael Charlton of the Red Peloton team. We're trying to get up the road, either 1-2s or drilling it on the front ourselves to try to make it up, and it's not happening. And what gets frustrating is it gets really close to bringing that group back multiple times, And look, I'm going to say all these things, and I'm going to say them in the context of being the guy that's just that didn't make it, that's kind of the sore loser in a way. So take it what you will, but it gets very frustrating. I don't mind guys, you guys hear the thing of I'm blocking for my teammate. That's perfectly fine. But I get real frustrated with them getting, like, there's 2 or 3 of us that are consistently pulling. I had one of my best 20-minute power efforts for the year in a crit, trying to pull this shit back. That shouldn't happen, but it is. And I'm on the front and I'm working hard. And then these guys roll in the line and they gum it up. And I know that's what you do. But when we're all willing to work, they had the San Jose Bike Club team. I asked those guys a few times, you have a guy up the road? Yeah, we have a guy in the break. Okay. And they're just sitting 5-6 wheels back. They're not getting in the way. They're letting us do our thing. Perfectly fine. This blocking shit you get, which fine, it actually worked. So kudos to you. But it's the kind of thing that you see in a lot of Cat 3 races. If you want to race at a higher level and you start doing that stuff, you're going to have some serious issues about it. You know what? Write me if I'm wrong, and please, I'm open to discussions on this. I'll be glad to hear anybody's input. And but basically, it gets frustrating. We don't bring him back. Scott Giles, of course, is a strong rider. He ends up soloing off, I believe, for the win. One of those teams that was blocking really good. There's multiple guys in there that you look down and you're like, you didn't have a team up the road. Why are you not helping? It blows me away that they're happy to be racing for 12th, which is exactly what we were. And then the last lap lead out was ridiculously strong for 12th place. And I'm like, and plus those guys that were doing blocking and everything, the riders don't win. Some of the, and then Dean for Pete's, he gets in a wreck. I don't know if he would have been, he had Jay up the road, and Jay wasn't likely going to win out of that group. I don't know. It's always interesting. I'm more of a sore loser on this one because I was really disappointed in the way that things went for me. But anyway, congratulations to everybody. Hope it went out well for you. Last thing we'll mention here is Rick Reinert. Folsom Bike ends up winning the Masters 50-54 group over Rick Morgan and Joseph Stern. They had 4 of them in a break. They were a pretty good gap up the road. John Begley ends up winning the field sprint for HSR Racing. Too bad. Too bad for Sean, because he probably could have done pretty well otherwise. In the 55 group, you have Joe Foster and Kevin Metcalf, and then Jerome Nadal taking the win on the field sprint. So that one, they had a big gap up the road. The Masters, and I did see the end of that one. I didn't see the end of this one though. The 60-64, Tim Davis wins that of Cycle Sport. Jim Sullivan, Clean Power, and Kevin Willits of Body Concepts. All right, Masters 65-69, Jeff Wickham, Gilberto Flores, and John Berg. And that's about as far as we're going to go for here today. All right, NorCal winners and losers. Well, I'm going to pick Rick Reinert for the 55s, winning that one. He's had a pretty good season. He's a pretty decent guy. We see him quite a bit around the area. Ride with him. I know he's been focusing on this, and his finish was pretty impressive. Came around there, kind of led in the corner. 2 guys jumped around him, and then he was able to close him out. Losers, I'm going to pick myself for this one, for the way that things went for me in the Masters. Pretty disgusted with how I ended up ending that one. So what are you going to do? All right, things that make you go, Well, Ben King gets a win at the Vuelta. Really got his career started off in a crazy breakaway at Nationals in 2010. And then he's had a smattering of World Tour results. That one I told you about was the Trento Adriatico. The winner was Contador. He was 3rd that day in 2014. He's won a stage in 2015 of Criterium International. First in 2016, stage 2 of the Amgen Tour of California. He had a 3rd in the 2016 stage 4 of the Vuelta. The winner that year was Calmejean. And he's really had a pretty good 2018, obviously, Vuelta. One thing he decided to do, though, they did a heat preparation for the Vuelta, where he was enclosed in a tent with a bunch of heaters and doing Zwift so they can figure out his hydration. And basically he smashed, power for quite some time in a tent. So good for him. All right. And lastly, you had Johan Bernal has been ordered to pay $1.2 million. Some of that's a different form of damages. So he may be, I don't know how they're going to enforce any of that with him, because when it comes to the U.S., it's probably not going to happen. So I'm very interested to know what his financial state is and to see if he's ever going to be able to get that taken care of, or if they're ever going to be able to collect. All right, so what's coming ahead? We have, like I said, we just, today was the San Francisco, Giro de San Francisco. We'll have to figure out how that goes. I didn't see any results on that one yet. Red Bull Bay Climb, District TT Championships, Oakland GP, and the Henleyville Road Race. Still have the Vuelta, the August 25 and up to September 16, and the USA Crit Series, the final on September 15th. All right, so then we have our mailbag. I got an interesting inquiry on my Strava. This is from a 2012 segment, and it says, "Hey Tyler, can you please delete this riding day file, as it has you riding 48.8 miles per hour through one segment. The segment is so flat, it is obviously a Strava mistake. It ruins the fun of Strava when these mistakes take up the leaderboard. Thank you." So I'm just wondering, this guy does a time trial bike and he sprints on the trail. So I'm just wondering if anybody thinks I should delete this whole file. I mean, it's a good ride otherwise. You let me know. All right, well, thanks for joining the Between Two Wheels podcast. As always, subscribe, share the show via iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, whatever podcast service you use. And for this week, we'll also be on the Between Two Wheels podcast YouTube channel. Check us out on Facebook, and we will be seeing you at the next race. Thank you.